Now, there was this disturbing story that NFL player Aaron Rodgers talked about that involved the Hat Man. Now, the Hat Man is a scary legend slash myth that involves this dark, shadowy figure that has a hat that, creeps into people's homes, stands in the corner and just looks very scary. And he is this entity that many people all over the world claim that they actually encountered. Check this out.
Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers said he's been haunted by the Hat Man since his first ayahuasca trip in Peru, and he's not the only one. Thousands of people around the world have reported seeing a shadowy figure in a hat standing in their room while they're sleeping. In an interview in August of 2022, Aaron Rodgers said, "The Hat Man sometimes appears in the distance, staring at me, usually holding a rabbit and a blade, just looking." Many claim that this was taken out of context and meant to be satire. But either way, it's really creepy because so many people have reported similar encounters with the Hat Man. What sets the Hat Man phenomena apart is the sheer number of these personal accounts from individuals who claim to have encountered the shadowy figure. The entity is often reported as being malevolent, radiating an evil aura that instills fear in those who cross its path. Have you encountered the Hat Man or any other shadow person before? There's numerous theories that try to explain it away by sleep paralysis, anxiety, stress, but others think it could be supernatural or an interdimensional being that seeps into our world that could be affected by those on ayahuasca, Benadryl, DMT, or other substances that weakens that barrier of our reality and their own.
Now, over the years, I've seen countless numbers of videos of people, having their testimony talking about encountering this Hat Man. They can't figure out or explain if it's a entity or some type of dimensional being that creeps into our world at night. I've heard many people claim that it's from sleep paralysis, while others say that it's a whole different being from a whole different dimension. Check out the story of my favorite paranormal encounterer, or the person who loves to give the best stories when it comes to the paranormal, Parahan. Check this out.
All over the world, millions of people have reported seeing the exact same entity known as the Hat Man. Now, the Hat Man is described as being this tall, shadow-like creature that's often seen with this stovepipe hat that often resembles Abraham Lincoln's. Sometimes he's described as having these bright red eyes. Sometimes he's seen with a cape. But one thing's for certain, anyone who has an encounter with the Hat Man usually is left terrified. Now, there was a story out of Virginia. There was this psychologist who started documenting cases of these young children who were seeing this man in their room every night. And so he has each one of these children draw a picture of what they see. And they all drew the exact same picture of this stick-like figure with the big hat. And so he begins to talk to them more about this man in their room. And they go on to tell him that sometimes he talks to them. Sometimes he tells them to do bad things. And even sometimes he scares them. And as he begins to talk to them and learn more about this Hat Man, he finds one thing in common. Each one of these childs tell him that the Hat Man says he lives in the George Washington National Forest. So he decides to go there for himself and look for the Hat Man. The first night he's there camping, right? He wakes up at 2 a.m. and he hears the sound of shuffling coming from outside his tent. So he unzips the door, he goes out, and he starts shining his flashlight around. And that's when he sees this shadowy figure. And it's just moving back and forth in the woods, constantly going back and forth. Now, he thinks to himself, I could run, but this thing will probably chase me. And if I stay here, it's probably eventually going to get me. He doesn't know what to do, so he just goes in his tent. And all night long, it sounds like this thing is getting closer to him, and then it would move further back. And then it would sound like it came closer, and it would move further back. Finally, the morning comes, And whatever this thing was, it was gone. So he decides to stay one more night. Nightfall comes and he finally gets asleep. Once again, he wakes up at 2 a.m. But this time, as he opens his eyes and he looks at the front of his tent, he sees there is this dark, shadowy figure punched in through the door of the tent. It has this big, wide brim hat, these bright red eyes, and this thing just grabs his legs and pulls him right out of the tent. He jumps up. He takes off running through the woods, but this thing continuously follows him. And then all of a sudden, he trips and falls, and then boom, he wakes up. He realizes this whole camping trip was just a dream. And he thinks this was all just in my head. Until he looks all around his bed and he sees all the pictures that the children had drew for him of this Hat Man. So what do you think? Is the Hat Man real?
A lot of these stories always sound so similar to me. Seeing a tall, shadowy figure dressed like a man wearing a hat standing in a corner, basically to put fear in people. And I don't know, these encounters sound so supernatural to me.
The Hat Man is such an interesting topic to me because back in the 70s, sleep clinics started to notice this pattern amongst their patients. Over the course of the next 20 years or so, they noticed that a large amount of the patients that were seeking help with their sleep all described seeing the same figure. A dark, shadowy figure wearing a top hat and standing in the doorway or in the corner of their room watching them sleep. And what researchers found most interesting was that these reports all came from people who had never heard of each other, spanning across different countries, cultures, and religions. And none of these people had an explanation for who or what this entity was. They had no name for it either. So doctors specializing in sleep wanted to study this phenomenon because they believed it showed one of the clearest examples of how the human brain constructs hallucinations in a really predictable way. Because why were all of these people feeling a presence when none existed, and why was this specific entity consistent across a spectrum of humanity? But unfortunately, their studies didn't explain a whole lot about this either. They determined it to just be a hallucination that occurs during sleep paralysis, where your body is pretty much paralyzed, but you're fully conscious. But being classified as a hallucination by doctors doesn't stop people from believing that the Hat Man is a real entity. Some people have even claimed to have captured pictures of him, and if that's true, then that begs the question, how are we seeing him on film if he's just a figment of our imagination?
I don't believe those patients were hallucinating, because it wouldn't make sense to say that, because all the testimonies around the world are saying the same thing. So why would it be these people hallucinating over here while the same people on the other hand are saying, no, we seen the same entity? Mind you, these are different people from different countries, different aspects of life, saying they've seen this similar Hat Man. Now, you can believe what you want, but I want to know, what do you guys think about this whole encounter that Aaron Rodgers talked about, famous NFL player, you know, and many people all over the world who give their encounters on seeing certain things? Comment down below your thoughts.